We all thought millennials were going to be a challenge in the workforce, but on today's episode of the Grow Wire podcast, we're diving into the generations that come after them and how companies need to prepare for their future workers with a digital-first mindset. We invited the CEO of Leapgen and two-time author Jason Averbook to discuss mindset, people, process, and technology when it comes to preparing your company for the next generation of employees.
You're listening to the Grow Wire podcast, a place where you'll learn the ins and outs of growing a business, running a business, or even taking your big idea, career, or personal development to the next level. It's all possible. Our host, Jason Maynard, the SVP of Marketing at Oracle NetSuite and the Editor-in-Chief of GrowWire.com, will take you on an exploration of growth through candid conversations with some of the most brilliant minds in entrepreneurship, entertainment, business development, and more. Whatever your goal, we know you'll walk away with the right tools to help fuel your own journey of growth.
Before we dive into this conversation with Jason, I want to quickly thank Blue Microphones for sponsoring this Grow Wire podcast episode. Everyone has a story to tell, and if you're a storyteller, you probably know Blue Mics for their iconic Yeti microphone, which has helped millions of people find and amplify their voices. If you're thinking about creating your own podcast, streaming, live, check out the new Blue's Yeti Caster, the complete mic and boom arm system, ready to connect to your laptop, bringing the ultimate broadcast studio setup to your home or office. Visit bluedesigns.com and use podcast code at checkout for a special price. That's use the code podcast. Hey, and I need you also to check out some of the content we have over on GrowWire, GrowWire.com. Check out GrowWire. You're going to find some great articles about growing your business. One of my favorites this week features my buddy Kelvin Joseph, who's the CMO and COO at Steiner Sports. In this article, Kelvin breaks down how to build relationships that grow your business while keeping everything real and authentic at the same time. He's got some great tips. I think you should check it out. You're going to like it. GrowWire.com. Thank you. Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Grow Wire podcast. I'm happy to have in the studio with me Jason Averbook. Welcome.
Great to be here.
Jason's the CEO of Leapgen, and also joining me is Kendall Fisher.
Hey, how's it going, everyone?
Grow Wire and Grow Wire show hostess.
Yes.
Welcome.
Yes. I'm excited to be here today.
All right. It's a sunny Santa Monica. So you have been traveling the world, literally, the last couple weeks, talking about your new book.
Yeah, I have been. So we launched the new book 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
And the launch, because of one of our partnerships, was in Asia, as well as a couple conferences I was speaking at. So we were in 3 cities in Australia, Singapore, Malaysia, and Hong Kong over the last 12 days or so. So
you don't even look jet lagged.
Thank God. I think I did last night. But,
yeah, you feel jet lagged, but you don't look jet lagged.
A little bit. No, I feel good.
You feel good? All right. Yeah. So the book is The Ultimate Guide to a Digital Workforce Experience, Leap for a Purpose. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in a second. Yeah. But before we get into it, let's get a little bit of your background here. So you've obviously been an entrepreneur. You've worked at large companies, small companies, writing a book. So where'd you get started?
Yeah, it's a fascinating story. So I started in this industry specifically at a company called Ceridian Corporation, or back at the time Control Data in Minneapolis, implementing payroll. As exciting as that sounds to you. Yeah. Wow, sounds really exciting, right?
Wow.
I always ask people how many people's parents raised them to be in HR and payroll, and I can't find anyone truly. Like, we all just end up in spaces somehow.
Did you grow up in Minnesota?
Grew up in Minneapolis. Yep.
Minneapolis,
in
okay.
Yep. So my parents are from there, and my dad was a business person. My mom was a educator, and I always loved technology. So those three together really made up kind of how I fell in love with this space. So at Ceridian, when I got there, I was implementing DOS. Do you know that? DOS? Do you know what DOS is?
No.
Okay.
Kendall might not be as old as us.
Maybe.
Yeah, potentially.
For those who are listening, I definitely am not.
Yeah.
But
so
I'll fake it.
implementing DOS-based payroll systems.
Wow.
And then my first task from a development standpoint was to develop the first Windows-based application, which was crazy. Because I all of a sudden had a bunch of people who were used to looking down and only wanted to look down. They never wanted to look up.
Right.
And all of a sudden when we introduced Windows, they had to look up and see where this thing called a mouse
Wow.
came into being and where the cursor was on the screen. And it was a massive, massive change in how business applications worked overall.
Were you a programmer then?
I was not a programmer. I was building strategy, so I was tied to requirements gathering and really thinking about how are these HR and payroll people going to use this thing now that it's in a GUI, graphical user interface type world.
Oh, wow.
So it's fascinating at the time.
How was human behavior changing then in terms of what the expectations of the
Well, at the time, no one knew how to use a mouse.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the concept of, hey, how do we actually rolled out this book. When we sold the software, we gave people an IDC book, Windows for Dummies, which is basically, hey, how do you use this thing called, like, you click the mouse?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember someone teaching a class where we actually said, hey, you click on it and then let go. And the person actually let go and threw the mouse.
I can't even imagine.
Dates me, kind of. Like, there were things called mouse pads back then.
Yeah, I know. I did have a mouse pad. I did use Windows.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure I started off on Windows 95.
Okay. Yeah.
But some people always thought of the mouse as like something like a foot pedal or something like that. You
Right.
maybe tap on it. Right?
Yeah.
Or an animal that just runs around.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. That too, right?
So I was with Ceridian, and we ended up developing the Windows product. We bought a company out of San Francisco called Tesseract at the time, and I got into a huge fight. And I always like to think of these moments in your life that are forks in the road.
Yeah.
I think are important for everyone. I got in a huge fight with our CEO, and it was over whether OS2 or Windows was going to be the way the world went.
Oh my God.
He chose OS2 and Lotus Notes, and I resigned the next day.
Oh my gosh.
Like, crazy hothead, resign. Like, I'm like, hey, you choose that, I'm leaving. And I truly remember writing the resignation letter and left the next day.
That's amazing.
Did you type it on Windows?
It was a typewriter.
Oh.
Remember those things? And anyway,
It was a handwritten note.
yeah, I ended up, the next day, I knew it was out there. The next day I started with PeopleSoft.
Oh, wow.
So that was my kind of shift from
Wow.
Ceridian and that world to the PeopleSoft world.
Wow.
Over that decision by
That was
the CEO.
That was it.
Yeah, weird how stuff happens.
Yeah. And so what were you doing for PeopleSoft?
So I started implementing their solutions. Then I moved into the sales world and started demoing their systems. Then I moved into the marketing world, then the product strategy world. So left there in 2003 I left there at 2004 at the acquisition time, but in 2003 was on the J.D. Edwards acquisition team. So June 1st, 2003, we announced that we were acquiring J.D. Edwards. Have you heard of that, J.D. Edwards?
Yes, I have heard of J.D. Edwards.
And then June 5th, 2003, Oracle announced their hostile. So, we were the smartest company in the world for 3 days until Oracle announced the hostile. And then really for the rest of my time there, which was the next 15 months, all we did is fight that hostile takeover. But it was an amazing time, and it was amazing kind of art of war kind of experience where you're like, oh my gosh, like we're trying to fight off this amazing thing. And Oracle, has all of the resources in the world, great resources, and we're backed with the Department of Justice, who's like, how do you spell ERP? Like, what's this thing called ERP, and why are you saying it might be a monopoly?
Yeah.
So we kind of knew we had no chance, but
you gave it a shot.
It went the way it went.
The way it played out. What did you learn going from like that decision to sort of like stick to your principle? In this case, it was a technology. You felt passionate that was the wrong direction. When you look back at it, you obviously early in your career, like how do you have that conviction to make that sort of?
I have no idea. It's a great question. I've people ask me this all the time. Like, I've never in my life worried about money, and I really suck at it. So like, I don't balance a checkbook. I've never thought about anything. I've never really thought about the like long-term implications. I've always thought about, hey, if I follow like my passion and follow my gut, so it's probably really stupid to just resign without having a job. And I really didn't know that I was going to have another job that quickly.
Yeah.
But at the time, what it taught me that there's a reason. Well, A, there's a reason that stuff happens. B, that if you truly do believe in something, that you need to follow that, even if it takes you down to a path that doesn't lead you to the end.
Yeah.
And the third thing, and this is just the way I live my life, is like you only live once. So if you're going to be unhappy, like,
why
get out.
Yeah.
So I knew I was going to be unhappy there.
How old were you at the time?
28, 27. I was like, seriously, like way too young to waste my time doing this.
No, but I think that there's a lesson in there too for any entrepreneur or business, person who has a big idea, because oftentimes you run into that situation where you're at a fork in the road and you're like, what am I going to do? And I hear these stories like the one that you just told where people end up making that, they just followed their intuition, whatever it was, and it ends up working out. What advice would you give to, a young 28-year-old, 27-year-old entrepreneur who's at that fork right now?
To watch outside of the world that you're actually in and try to see. So, for me at the time, I was watching what Windows was happening. I was watching that they were selling Windows machines at Target.
Yeah.
I was watching that they were selling Windows-based machines everywhere. So, I could see that Windows was actually taking over. So, without getting into too much detail about the technology, look outside of where you are and try to see what's happening outside of you to guide whatever your quote-unquote decision point is.
Yeah.
To me, that was the biggest learning.
Yeah.
And you saw the big shift coming, obviously, from the user standpoint to a new platform and said, I don't want to fight the last war, I want to go fight the new battle.
Yeah, Jason, that sounds really good the way you just said it. I wish I could say it. I see the big shift, so this is why I'm doing it. But at the time, I knew something was happening. I definitely wasn't the one saying, there's a big shift happening, everyone has to go that way. But,
well, that leads me into my next question that I'm going to ask you, but we'll take a quick break, and we're going to come back to platform shift and your next big thing.
Okay, good.
If you've ever met a famous athlete at a corporate event or gotten an official autograph, chances are Steiner Sports made it happen. Here's Brandon Steiner.
We believe that there's magic in the moments that sports creates. We get customers closer to the game and help companies use the power of sports to grow their business. We've been in business 30 years, and we've had multiple systems to keep track of all the athletes and all of our customers. Multiple systems means multiple headaches. So we made the move to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite lets us replace all of our finance, inventory, and CRM functions with one convenient system. Now all the departments can see the same data. And if I have a question about our business, I can get the answer quickly.
Find out how Steiner Sports scaled their business to millions of customers. Go to netsuite.com/Steiner. You'll also get our free guide titled Overcoming Your 5 Obstacles to Growth. That's netsuite.com/Steiner for our free guide and the story of a great American company.
All right, so it's 2004, 2005. We didn't call it cloud computing back then. It was on demand, and SaaS was being thrown around. So big platform shift happening again. What gives you the motivation or the idea to go leave PeopleSoft and go start your own company?
Yeah, so Knowledge Infusion was started. So one of the things that always frustrated me at PeopleSoft, and it frustrated me at Ceridian too, I just didn't really take the time to understand it, is we worked our butts off to be in the Gartner Magic Quadrant in the upper right. And if you get to the upper right in the Gartner quadrant, you're like gold. Gold starts raining down.
Yes.
At PeopleSoft, the gold rained down, and that combined with Y2K, we could do nothing wrong.
Yeah.
But one of the things that was fascinating is we were in the upper right, and we put laminated posters everywhere. We put it on mouse pads. We put it above the urinals in the bathroom so everyone saw, hey, we've done it. We made it to that upper right. We beat Oracle. We beat SAP. We beat Lawson. All those guys that were playing at the time. But I was in charge of our corporate visits in Pleasanton, California, and people would come in every day, CIOs and CHROs, and say, your product sucks. We're not getting the results that we thought we'd get from the product. Yeah. And it drove me crazy.
Yeah.
Because, how can it be that Gartner, who I've worked my butt off getting us positioned in the upper right, is saying this and you're saying this?
Yeah.
And what the aha moment at the time was that the organizations didn't think through the strategy that was required, the vision that they actually wanted to achieve, and take the time to put in place the plans that they needed to be successful with the software. They thought that the technology itself would just drive everything.
Yeah.
And then when cloud became the word, where you couldn't go anywhere without seeing a billboard about the cloud, is when I was like, oh my gosh, these HR people are about to go berserk. Because all they do is follow each other anyway.
Yeah.
So the minute one said they're going to the cloud, then no, if they're going to the cloud, we're going to the cloud, we're going to the cloud. I'm like, don't you do it, because all that's going to happen. Not that I didn't want them to go to the cloud, but all you're going to do is repeat the sins of the past.
Yeah.
And you're going to come back, you're going to go live, worst expression ever, which we can talk about if we want to, and all you're going to have is the same thing you had before.
Yeah.
And you're going to come back and say, we're not happy with the product. it's not that you're not happy with the product, it's you're not happy with your organization and how ready it is to use the product. So knowledge infusion was all about how do we infuse knowledge to the world about what do you have to do to be ready to adopt technology.
That's a pretty big idea, in that if you look back over the history of most business applications, it's always been this frustration of, you spend a lot of money buying the software, but then you would spend 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times whatever you paid the software vendor to get some value out of it.
And honestly, it drove me crazy. And I kept trying to say, we're going to do this knowledge infusion, and we're going to be completely agnostic. Like, we're not going to care what technology you're using, because it matters from a feature standpoint, but the success has less to do with which technology you're using and more to do with your focus. And I have a great mentor in the space, Doug Merritt, who's at Splunk now, who once said to me, he's like, you can take A-grade software with C and D grade change management and process work, the overall grade is going to be an F.
Yeah.
You can take C or D grade software with a focus on process and change, and you're going to have a better grade at the end of the day. So don't base it on the software that we're making, base it on what you do around that. And that was really where I was like, wow, I'm going to get off the vendor side for a second, focus on how can we actually make customers happy. Because the other thing about being on the vendor side, and this is hard for vendors, is the vendor is the only one in the room that doesn't have feelings. Like, we're not going to blame ourselves. We're not going to blame IT. We still have to work with the big SIs on the other stuff. So, let's just blame the vendor.
Right.
Let's just do another RFP and we'll switch.
Right.
And it's just like a habit trail of going through vendors and getting organizations to realize that's not the problem was a really fun project.
What made you decide you wanted to start your own business, though? That's what's kind of fascinating to me, because you'd been through, obviously, the one experience at Ceridian, you went through PeopleSoft and the acquisition. What made you say, hey, I'm just going to do this myself?
I hate to say this, and I don't hate to say it. I think it's patience. Like, I feel like things don't move fast enough. And, I felt bottled.
It was your lack of patience.
Well, yes, it's the overall patience. So I feel that things
like a hothead leaving work because they didn't decide.
Yeah, I think I probably have a history of that. There was a point in time where I broke tennis rackets over my knee as well. So, but it has to do with the fact that, like, I have a vision.
Yep.
I want to see the vision through, and I don't. It's hard for me to do it. I think I'm unemployable that way. It's hard for me to do it, when someone else is driving the car. So, or whatever we're going to be driving. So, like, for me, it was like, I want to drive this. I see it. I see the possibilities. So why not try it? And
no, what I hear from this is you saw a category that hadn't been created yet, and you created the category for this new, instead of, like you said, instead of being on the vendor side, there was a missing piece between the two. Right?
Kendall, I always see it. We were talking about sports earlier. I saw it as like the offensive line parted this huge hole.
Yeah.
And there was something I could run through.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm going to run through this, and I'm going to double mortgage, triple mortgage, whatever it takes from a cost standpoint to do it. I'm going to hire the best people in the industry who also have the same passion and same beliefs, and just run as fast as I can.
Yeah.
And that was fun.
So when you started the business and you ran the company for what, from 2005 to 2012?
Right, exactly.
And you guys had a great run.
Yeah.
You ultimately ended up selling the business to Aperio.
Right.
In 2012.
2012.
Yep. What was that process to go through of something that you loved? It was, your creation.
So if you
vision.
think about that, 2004 to 2012, like, everything was going good from an on-premise consulting standpoint. Traditional consulting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
2007, 2008, all of a sudden things, started getting a little bit rocky.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I realized was, wow, this whole concept of as a service, is taking off. So how do we actually think about consulting as a service and do it differently? And once again, my success is by the people I surround myself with. So if I say Doug Merritt, Jason Corsello, who, was at Yankee Group at the time, we brought him over to Knowledge Infusion. He's like, why don't we build this subscription model where instead of people doing these big projects, they could consume, consulting in bite-sized subscription model. I was like, brilliant. And then as the economy started to go, tank, it made a lot more sense because people were more likely to spend $10,000 on a subscription basis than they were $100,000 on a big project. So that became a big part of our business and I became kind of addicted to reinventing how consulting was done as well as part of that. So fast forward to the 2012 component, we were actually doing a big project with a company called McGraw-Hill that everyone knows about.
Yeah,
of course.
And they had just selected, based on our guidance, Workday as the tool they were going to put in, good or bad. And they said, hey, we really love you guys, but you don't have an implementation practice. I'm like, no, we don't. They're like, we found a company that we think you can partner with. And it was Aperio.
Okay.
And like, but they don't have the stuff you guys have. So is there a way you could work together?
Wow.
So it's always fascinating when a customer brings you together that way.
That's interesting.
So that's how I ended up meeting Chris Barbin and Rinder Singh from Aperio, and that's what brought the two of us together.
Oh, that's great.
It was a joint customer.
When you look back when you started the company, what do you think you got right? Your post-mortem through KI.
I think that what we got right was this concept of never wavering from what you stood for.
And what was that, if you could put it into words?
We stood for the best interest of the customer.
And that is what I was really hoping you were going to say, because from what I heard from the start of, this story and from, when you were with PeopleSoft, it was the software that you guys were selling. You weren't selling to the customer, you were selling the software.
Yeah.
You came up with this idea to sell customer first, which was rare in that time.
Right.
That was when the shift really started, but
Yeah.
then you thought customer first.
Yeah, and I mean, people would try to buy us.
Yeah.
Not buy us acquisition-wise, but say, hey, we'll give you $1 million a year if you'll just recommend our software. We'll give you $5 million in implementation business if you just recommend our software. I'm like, we're never going to do that.
Yeah.
Because it's not the best interest of the customer. It might be the best interest of us,
Yeah.
but it's not the best interest of the customer. So, I mean, that's by far, people are the next component, I would say, to that.
Yeah.
Which is take care, bring the right people in, know when people are there at the right time, know when it doesn't make sense for them any longer, and to continue to bring in people as the company grows through its various points would be the second thing. But if you focus on the customer and you focus on raving fans, like for me, that has to be the number one thing.
Yeah.
What do you think you messed up on? Like if you had the do-overs, what are the couple things you go back and be like, I wish I would have done X.
So my
instead of Y?
co-founder, Heidi Spierge, who I owe so much credit to, she and I, the way that Knowledge Infusion started was Heidi worked for me at PeopleSoft. Heidi came in one day completely unexpectedly and quit. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? She's like, I'm going to go start a consulting firm. I'm like, what do you mean start a consulting firm? She's like, not a firm, but I'm just going to go do some consulting. I was like, okay, well, can I do it with you maybe? And she's like, what? And that started the discussion. So I think that one of the things that we didn't do, Jason, is we didn't actually focus on building and I still work with organizations all the time doing this, an anti-fragile foundation. So how do you build a foundation that's made up of tools to be able to scale a company?
Okay.
Like we didn't know what we were doing. Like, well, let's get a legal expert from here. Let's get a financial system from here. Let's get a payroll system from here. Like we didn't have any idea what we were doing. Like it was she and I that were going to do independent consulting, and all of a sudden it just grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. So we didn't spend the money on tools. We didn't spend money on repeatable processes. We didn't spend money on foundation and things like that. And we grew into that over time.
Oh, interesting.
So if I'd say that if I had to do things differently, we could have gotten to the same conclusion as a company from a financial standpoint, maybe not exit, but from a financial standpoint, in half the time if we would have actually focused on the foundation first.
Interesting.
For our listeners, make sure you write that one down.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so we're going to talk about the new company in a little bit here, but I mean that was one of the things I said. It's like I don't really care if we make any money the first year.
Yeah.
As long as we have a foundation in place, because this is a long game. This isn't a short game.
Yeah.
And if we focus on that, it's going to help us so much at the end.
I just had an interview with Luke Walton, actually. And for those listening in, we recorded this podcast on July 2nd, which happens to be the day after we found out that LeBron James is coming to LA. But we had an interview with Luke Walton a few days before that. And everybody asked, well, what's your goal for this team? What's your goal for this team? And he said, I realized he came from, Golden State, and he said, when I came to the Lakers, I realized it wasn't all about winning. It wasn't all about the end, it wasn't getting to the, playoffs. We have to grow the foundation of this team before we can even think about that.
Yep.
And I just thought of that in business terms, like same thing. You can't be focused on what the end game is. You got to first build that.
And you know what's really interesting, Kendall? You know what you need to do that?
Yeah.
That P word, patience.
Patience.
We're coming back to that. So
when did that come into your life?
So I learned that lesson through, the question you asked, which is what did you do wrong? I mean, I learned that, you can push so hard.
Yeah.
And you can push so hard, but there's times that if you push too hard, you break.
Yeah.
So how do you make sure that you blend that concept of building a solid foundation and making sure you're in it for the long game with the concept that the long game is not, it takes some time.
Right.
And that's one of the, as an entrepreneur, I think it's one of the things that you learn over time, which, hopefully age and experience helps with.
Yeah.
So you sold KI in 2012.
Yep.
A couple years you were the CEO of Marcus Buckingham.
Right.
Sold that to ADP. And then just in 2017, then you launched a new company, Leapgen.
Right.
So you're back at the entrepreneurial game once again.
Yeah.
Tell us about Leapgen, and it sounds like you've got a few lessons that you've learned along the way that you're doing differently this time.
Yeah. So when I left the Marcus Buckingham company, I mean, one of the things that Marcus Buckingham's a great author and a great thought leader, but one of the things that Marcus and I realized as we worked together, which I think is also important for your listeners, is you have two great thought leaders without great operational people, and sometimes you don't have what it takes to be successful. So, one of the things Marcus and I did is brought someone in to really run the operational side, and all of a sudden we're like, seriously, why do we need two of us anymore?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be quote-unquote acquired by ADP, which goes back to what I said about being unemployable, I think. So, I took 9 months in Manhattan Beach to kind of chill. First of all, spend time with kids, which was great, and my wife. But second of all, just to watch what was going on in the world. And I did 2 favors for 2 chief HR officers, one for a company called Oshkosh up in Wisconsin and one called Humana, which I'm sure you've heard of. They were, at the time, thinking about merging with Aetna. And I took the time to actually watch what was going on in the space. I was like, holy cow, this is all about to blow up again. And I saw the offensive line part again, where I was like, this is about to be another hole that I can run through. And there was a huge part of me that I was hanging out, not working, where I was like, do I really want to do this again? But there was another part of me that was kind of addicted to it, where I'm like, oh, this is a hole. Yeah. I'm going to run through it again. So called Heidi, former co-founder. She's like, dude, I'm not doing that again. I need some time off. I'm doing yoga. I'm going on a yoga retreat, stuff like that. So I was like, shoot. So I found another great co-founder who was part of Knowledge Infusion also, People You Trust, and I brought back together a great core team to say, hey, this is what I want to do. This is what I would love you to be part of, but we're going to start differently. We're not going to start with the people and bringing in high-profile talent. We're going to start with building a foundation, because this is about to explode, but we've got a little bit of time as it explodes as well.
Well, let's take a quick break here, and we're going to come back and find out what's exploding.
Yeah.
If you don't know about Ring, you should check out the video doorbell for your smartphone. Their product's based on a simple principle. Use your existing home Wi-Fi network to create a ring of security around your house. When you hook up to Wi-Fi, there's a free Ring app that alerts you whenever someone approaches your door or comes in the range of your security camera. You can even view an HD video stream of the person and speak to them using two-way audio communication. The Maynard house actually has Ring of security around it as well. Make sure if we're not home, we have a package dropped off. I can make sure nobody's trying to sneak in. The backyard, keep an eye on them. An alarm will goes off. Nobody's going to steal a package at our house because we use Ring. Now, you can also use Ring. You can get your hands on a Ring Video Doorbell 2 at a discounted price. We were able to negotiate a special deal with those Ring folks. You just go to ring.com and use the promo code GROW20RING at checkout for $20 off a Video Doorbell 2. Do it fast. This promotion only lasts through the end of July. So what is the big opportunity then that you saw with the founding of this company?
So I saw, and I read this quote from Jack Welch, if the rate of change on the outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside, the end is near. And, I saw that all these digital natives had better technology in the palm of their hand, better technology in their pocket, better technology attached to them they were sleeping with, et cetera, than what companies were giving people to work with. Mm-hmm. They had better apps, and they actually were better technologists than what the companies had. So we were living in this world where the outside exceeded the inside for the first ever, which meant their expectations as they enter the workplace are and completely different than ever before. And they're coming in, and for whatever reason, businesses kind of disrespect the year that it is. Mm-hmm. Like, it's 2018. But yet, when you go into a business, they act like it's 1998. Mm-hmm. Like, we're living in 2018 out here, but then you walk across the threshold, and it's 1998. I still have old processes. I still do paper. Mobile isn't ready yet. No one's ready to use it. Like, what?
Yeah.
So, for me, that was the aha moment where I was like, everyone in business, applications and business overall, is about to go through this concept of digital. This concept of a digital transformation. Overused term, which is why I don't use it. But one of the things that I became really aware of is that there's a difference between digital and technology.
Well, that's what's interesting about this change. If you go back to your DOS experience and the client server and then moving to cloud, was they were primarily technology and business model changes, right? But it was still kind of the same way.
Yeah, I was delivering software on disk or a CD that fell out of my magazine that got me onto America Online, or then client server, or even cloud.
You're in a browser.
Yeah. It's still this, but it was business software that, whether it was modem or whether it's internet, I turned it and gave it to employees, but it was still business software. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It wasn't designed for the employees. Now, all these digital natives were using these tools that were designed for them, whether it be a dating app, or whether it be a social app, or whether it be a maps app, or whatever they were using. That's designed for them. Yeah. It wasn't like designed for the operational group that I somehow turned to them. And that is the revolution or the evolution or the explosion that we're in right now.
So Leapgen is the business model similar to what you were doing initially?
Yeah, it's very similar, but it's such a different time. And really, once again, customer first focused, agnostic from a software standpoint. If I think about, I talk about people, process, and technology all the time. It's one of the most overused people, process, technology. In the book, which I know we'll talk about in a few minutes, I added mindset to that. So mindset, people, process, and technology. And the concept of, and by the way, the ratios have shifted drastically. If you think about how much time you focus on each of those. We used to focus 90% of our efforts on technology. Mm-hmm. I say used to. There are still organizations that do. 5% on the people and process. Yeah. Mindset is the concept of how do you get businesses to think digital first and realize that digital isn't technology. So you need a digital strategy. And a digital strategy is people. It's mindset, it's people, it's process, and it's the tools or technology. And if you do that, then all of a sudden your chances of a successful deployment to digital natives of tools that are actually designed for them increase a gazillion %. Yeah. And it's so much fun. It's more fun than I've ever had, because you speak and you watch these business people's eyes and you say that and you're like, oh my gosh, you're exactly right. Mm-hmm. Like, why are we thinking that way inside the business when outside the business, our kids, our parents, our 60 and 70 and 80-year-old parents are operating this other way. Mm-hmm. And I don't know where...
When grandma's on Facebook tagging folks, you know what I mean? Yeah. Snapping pictures, sharing, and the organization is still in a
I brought this
client-server mindset.
I brought this up in my speech in Hong Kong a couple days ago. Or I was like, when did this happen? So I actually did an online poll. I'm like, when did this shift actually happen? When we were so confident that outside exceeded inside. Yeah. And the majority of them said in the last 3 to 4 years. So if you say that, and then you say, when's the last time you'd re-exploded, I'll just say, your business process to focus on the outside versus the inside? No one has. Yeah. Right. huge opportunity we
That's the
all have in order to make software work.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're just going to keep blaming the software and go through another generation, and the speed in which the outside's exceeding the inside is now faster than ever.
Yeah.
So
Right.
businesses are just falling further and further behind. Every day they ignore this.
And tell us about the motivation then to actually write the book. So the ultimate guide to a digital workforce experience, Leap for a Purpose. Sounds like you said, I got to write a book about this to teach folks what's happening.
So the last book, HR From Now to Next, was a book that, luckily, the folks at Aperio gave me a huge chance to write, and, was sponsored by a couple different organizations as well, and ended up being used in 19 different universities. And one of the things that I loved about that was, and I was teaching at the University of Minnesota at the time, where they told me I needed a book. That's the whole reason there's two reasons I wrote a book. First of all, they told me I needed a book, and second of all, when my father passed away, I happened to find a book in his closet that was written by my grandfather that I didn't even know he ever wrote a book.
It's in your genes.
It was crazy. So my grandfather was a professional wrestler, oddly enough. And he
Wait a minute. Who? No, you got. Who?
No, I don't want to go into that. But then he wrote a book, and he was actually
professional wrestlers in the
Minneapolis. Yes.
Yeah.
He was had some mental illness. He wrote a book called "Deal Me Out." Like, it's still on Amazon. You can find it. And it was all about his suicide. He didn't commit suicide, but he was suicidal at the time. I'm like, holy cow! Like, I need to write a book so I capture not that kind of stuff about me, but the part about what is it that I do, so that my kids and grandkids, all that stuff, that they have some sort of a legacy. So it was really fun to do the first book, and then the second book, when I was like, wow. I want to get ahead of this. Mm-hmm. So I want to get ahead of this before people start really realizing this digital chasm is out there between strategy and execution. That's been out there for a long time, but it's bigger than ever before. So that's what led it. And by the way, the other thing, just really quickly, is Leap. The name Leapgen, where it comes from is I had a chance to meet people that are smarter than you is my big key for entrepreneurs. Had a chance to meet a great author named Steve Farber, who lives in San Diego, and he wrote a book called The Radical Leap. And if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. Radical Leap, the leap stands for love, energy, audacity, and proof. And one of the things that I fell in love with about that was that in order to do this world of digital, in order to do things differently, you actually have to do those things. You actually have to love what you do in order to generate energy, to do the audacious, and then continue to prove that value. And for me, a lot of people think Leapgen's like, how do you leap to the next generation? I'm like, yeah, it kind of works. But for us internally, I wanted to make sure that we brought in people that met that mantra of leap, and we're teaching customers that, all of our customers as well, to make them raving fans, is, guys, you have to leap. If you don't love what you do, if you're not ready to break the status quo, if you're not ready to do the audacious, you're not going to survive this process of digital.
Well, especially because right now in the digital age, authenticity is number one. It's key. Everybody knows when you're not being authentic in this digital age because it's, your life is everywhere.
Kendall, how often do you use love in your life? Business people don't like using love.
Yeah.
That was a huge taboo not that long ago.
Right.
And the fact that, the fact that we're saying, wow, you have to love what you do, what do you mean you have to love what you do? And people, in today's world, if you don't love what you do, you leave.
Right.
So,
you left earlier than most.
Yeah, well, all these people are living in the status quo world that don't love what they do.
Right.
They're not going to have the energy to do this because it's a massive shift.
Right.
Well, that's where I thought your notion of bringing in mindset into people, process, and technology to me was one of the things that stuck out.
So I have a brilliant head of marketing, Kristen Penny. She worked with me at PeopleSoft. And she read the great, the book Mindset, which is a great book that's out about, do you have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset? And for me, that really resonated with me because I was like, that is not just for life. That's tied to, in order to succeed, this concept of enterprises going through a digital change, but it's also tied to entrepreneurship. If you have a fixed mindset, you have a long, slow, painful trail ahead of you.
Yeah.
If you have a growth mindset where you're truly thinking about change every day and reinventing yourself almost every day, that's where you're going to be successful.
Yeah,
So,
and I would argue too that if you're an entrepreneur, you have to have the mindset that you're able to pick yourself up when things go wrong, because a lot of times you can't have success without a little bit of failure. If you don't have the mindset to help you wrap your head around that,
or a lot of failure.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
What light bulb went off for you that made you realize mindset has to be part of this? Do you have a specific example?
Yeah, I mean, the specific example is that the concept of people process technology wasn't enough.
Yeah.
Like in the people world, you're focusing on who's going to be using these tools. In the process world, you're like, what process are you putting in front of them? And the technology, that's what's going to make you successful. But what was missing was the fact that people were approaching it without the mental training that they would need to go into it, without the fitness that they would need to say, if we are a culture that's a fixed mindset, and I'm coming in with this rapid transformation program, like that's organ failure 101. Like there's no chance that the heart's going to keep working in the body. If I have a mindset that's a growth mindset, and I've got my project teams and my program teams are built in a way that are tied to that, like that was a piece of the recipe that was missing to me, that wasn't covered in that people process technology equation.
So I'm curious, with the company's relatively young, you're a year and a half old,
yes.
right? And the book's been out 3 weeks.
Yeah,
2 weeks.
we haven't even seen it. It's in Asia, but it's not really in the U.S.
but
yet.
it's
Yeah.
You're talking about it,
Yes,
the ideas,
yeah.
right? When you go out and have this conversation with organizations, I assume there's a lot of receptivity to the idea, but are these companies or these organizations really ready to make the leap?
So, thanks for using Leap, by the way.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. Caught that.
Very, very good.
Did you get that?
Yeah.
I think that the organizations know they have to be, but one of the things that we're building from a services standpoint is how to coach them to be. And by the way, I use coach on purpose.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to do it for them.
Yeah.
We've done that. I mean, this is an old recipe where you have systems integrators come in, hand over the keys to the kingdom. Hey, back up the bus. We're going to be here for 9 months. We're going to put this in, and then we're going to leave.
Right.
And what happens? It leaves. We stop watering the plant, and it dies.
Yeah.
Like, you have to coach this concept of mindset in digital. So, organizations are ready because they've watched, oldest cliches like the Blockbuster go out of business and all these new business models being they're all watching that, but they have no clue
How to do it.
as to how to do it.
Yeah.
And they have not that they don't know how, they don't know how to maneuver their organization to do it. Like, what do you mean we have to work, HR and IT or finance and IT have to work together? And IT is the people that are holding us back.
Yeah.
IT is saying, oh, HR or finance, they're the people that aren't giving us requirements. I'm like, guys, this is different. This is not about customization of technology. You should kill your HRIS function. You should kill your finance IT function. What we're really talking about is not technology. We're talking about digital. And then tools. And the part of that equation that's the technology is so small because of the cloud today,
Right.
that if I get the mindset, people, and process right, like, I'm not going to say it's guaranteed, but there's a huge chance of success.
Yeah.
If I just jump at the technology and jam it in, that's what causes failure. And I always in the world of the digital natives, I always say, if you download an app from the App Store that you don't like, what do?
Delete it.
You delete it. How often do you go back to see if it got better?
Never.
Never. So you roll out phase 1 of a new piece of technology, and it doesn't meet the expectations. Like,
Gonzo.
yeah. Like phase 2, how many people are going to come? I would say phase 1. If phase 1 isn't successful, it leads to phase N, which is phase never.
Right.
Like, it's never going to happen, and people start this whole habit trail of blaming the vendor again.
Right.
So it's a new world.
Right.
Well, it's interesting because when we were researching this and looking at how you're talking about the book, you said there's no one-click prescription.
Yeah.
And do you find are folks looking for the one-click prescription?
Oh, dude, everyone's
Is that
always
the
looking
easy
for
button?
the easy button.
Okay.
Like, oh yeah, everyone's like, oh yeah, if we could, it's one vendor. We're looking for a one vendor approach, and we're looking for a one, thing that's going to cover everything. But that's not the world we live in, and it's not. It doesn't even make sense. Like people say, hey, if we like for me, even if you think about your employees, like how many times at the same time that an employee is changing their address, is at the same time that they're actually looking at their paycheck? It's not. At the same time as an employee saying they're having a baby, is at the same time that they're saying they got married?
Right.
Probably not.
Right.
So think about those examples. Think about apps we use today. Not all apps have the same look and feel, but we're using them at different times. So one of the big things in the book is we try to say is we were all hired to do our jobs. I mean, myself as a co-founder, you guys as entrepreneurs and leaders in your organization, you were hired to do your job, not to deal with administrative stuff. And you want we talk about this in the book, a frictionless workforce experience. How do I actually make sure that experience comes to you instead of you going to it? And, whether that's through a device, whether that's through a watch, whether that's through contact lenses we're wearing, whatever it is in the future, the average employee that we serve in the Fortune 500 companies we work with, the average employee uses 97 business applications when we do persona work. 97. And the fact that they have to log into each one and go through change management training and get an email saying, hey, guess what? We just launched a new one. Like, there's no way they're going to remember it. So what are they going to do? Call. Abandon. And people say, why aren't people using the technology? It's because it's not thought of in a way that's like tied to experience. One of the things I would say, experience is not interface. And that's a big point of the book. Like, if you order an Uber, you might say it's a good user interface, but what if the car never shows up?
Right.
Bad experience.
Right.
Order something on Amazon.
Right.
Good user interface, bad experience if the product never shows up. So, like, we have to start thinking about experiences and the fact that people remember how you make them feel, not what you do for them.
Can I ask, is this a shift that you're seeing because of millennials? As a millennial asking, because I know for me, I grew up with technology. I grew up in the digital era, and for me, that's when I come into a job or when I come in, to use an app. That's what I'm looking for. Is that I want the good experience, I want the good interface, and I want it to be as easy as possible. Is that a shift you're seeing with millennials across the board?
Yes, but not at the micro level you just stated. Not tied to the technology. Millennials and Gen Z, they want to feel loved.
Love. There's that word again.
No, and y'all want attention.
Me? No.
Yes. Like, people always say, let's give them feedback. They don't want feedback. They want, Marcus Buckingham says this all the time. People don't want feedback. Like, if your spouse comes to you and says, hey, I've got some feedback for you. Is that a good thing? No. Like, you want attention.
Yeah.
The reason you go back and look at Instagram, how many likes you got, or look at, that is because you want attention.
Right.
So the concept of digital natives are growing up not knowing that what a phone book was.
Right.
B, the fact that you want attention, and C, you are not scared. Like, my dad worked for the same company for 48 years.
Yeah.
And my grandfather, while he was wrestling, worked for that same company for 49 years.
Wow.
That's 97 years with the same insurance company.
Yep.
Like,
you're not going to see that.
No, you guys, I'm picking on you specifically. Like, you don't care about, like, if you're treated bad at a job, you go somewhere else. And if you look at Glassdoor, the 3 reasons that people leave: bad manager, impossible to get anything done, and the concept of, we don't understand where the company's going. So for
you
me,
were ahead of your time. If we take it all the way back to that OS and Microsoft,
you
debate.
You were a millennial before it became cool to be a millennial.
Oh, thank God someone said I'm cool, because my kids don't say that I'm cool ever. But that concept...
You needed attention before you knew you needed attention.
I need a lot of attention. But that's what you just said. Like, that's what the digital natives, Gen Z, millennials want.
Yeah.
And if they don't get it, they'll go somewhere else.
Right.
So I even do this, like, very basic, Kendall. I mean, if you look at career sites, say this with organizations all the time, look at the career site. Look at your career site. Like, it looks really cool to work there. It looks really sexy to work there. There's beer, there's ping pong, et cetera, et cetera. You walk in, and most companies' intranets are like link farms. Like, what happened to that concept of the brand, the fun, et cetera, et cetera? It goes away. And what do you do as a millennial that shows up day one and like, this is bait and switch. I'm filling out a bunch of paper. I don't have a computer. By the way, it's an old computer. And why am I here?
Yeah. That
won't work in companies anymore.
So do you feel like smaller companies have an advantage in this new cycle?
It's just easier to change.
Right?
I don't even know to say it. That's what it is. It's easier to change. I mean, we're working with these Fortune 500 companies that have been like it's so easy to be status quo.
Well, and they've got a buildup over all these years of just crud, right? Of like this system and that one is just composts, right?
And there's also a bunch of mutts, and I say mutts, like people caught between digital immigrants and digital natives, like me and you. Like, we knew the old world, we see the new world, we don't know exactly how to, like, we fall back in. Like, our lens, unfortunately, has both worlds.
Yeah.
You know? Kendall,
Jason just got an iPhone 8. He was on an iPhone, 3 for the last, since I was here.
You know, Kendall, your lens is only one world. You know, I have a 10-year-old who, he's like, why is a phone book that you sit on called a phone book? Like, he got a hair. I'll never forget. We took him to get his haircut back living in Minnesota. Yeah. And he was getting ready to get his haircut. And they had to go get a phone book.
Yeah.
And they went to get the phone book. And they said, Alex, be right back. I'm going to go get a phone book. And he looked at me and goes, Daddy, what's a phone book? Just like that. And I was like, Alex, it's something you sit on so they can reach your hair. He's like, oh. And then he goes, why do they call it a phone book? Like, that kind of thinking. Like,
they store their old phones in this book.
Right.
Something like that.
That's why
would
it's so
I
big.
use a phone book to look up a phone number?
Right.
Like, it makes no sense to digital natives. So, yes, that world, it's all about experience. It's all about attention. It's all about now.
Yep.
And most experience, and this has nothing to do with transactions. Mm-hmm. Most companies don't offer an experience to employees in a digital way that when they're not sitting in the office playing kumbaya with everyone, that they feel.
Right.
And that's what's about to change.
So what's your advice for any company trying to navigate this change?
Is to think first, just to have that digital first mindset. Like, why would you do it on paper? Like, why? Why would you do it on paper? A. First of all, the audience is no longer, the second thing is the audience is no longer you. The audience isn't the HR people, it's the finance people, it's the workforce. If you put the onus on the workforce, and not onus from a negative standpoint by calling something self-service, but giving them the direct access they need to do their jobs better, guess what? You're going to have better data. You're going to be able to focus. Mm-hmm. And the third thing is to realize that because of where the world is today, if you have a strong foundation, now you're going to be able to leverage AI, you're going to be able to leverage voice, you're going to be able to leverage bots to basically change your business. Because I'm going to be able to get rid, and I said get rid of this on purpose, get rid of all the people that answer questions and turn those people into problem solvers. Yeah. And if I do that, the company's going to transform so much faster. But
there's a lot of inefficiency baked into companies.
There's so much inefficiency, but I think the thing that a lot of people unfortunately, in this world of AI and bots and RPA that we're living in today, a lot of people think I can just go buy an AI tool, plop it on top of my thing. And I was like, hey, if you talk to Siri or you talk to Alexa and there's nothing underneath it, what's going to happen? Yeah. Nothing.
Right.
So that's what a lot of companies, when I say focus on foundation first, is so important, because as AI advances, if you don't have a foundation, you're out of luck.
Well, this is great timing for your book coming out and with all the changes that are going on.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's an awesome time, and it's so fun to talk to companies because, like I said, people's eyes open and they're like,
they know it.
Yeah,
they do know it, but
they don't know. Yeah.
One of the things that I love about what I do is I love trying to be able to break things into languages that business people understand. People are scared of AI. People are scared of a lot of technology. I'm like,
I am afraid of drones, by the way.
Well, I always ask people, like,
drones do scare me.
Yeah, I always say, raise your hand if you're a technologist. And no one raises their hand. Like, the world we live in, you all are. You all install software. Right. You all configure software. Like, you're all technologists. You all need to think digital first. And if people do that, they have the mindset to be successful.
So what's next for you? Less travel, hopefully.
Rest.
Sleep.
So the biggest thing for me is, I just got back from this 2-week trip. And one of the things that's really important to me is, as much as I love where I live, I love the United States, and I love, that part of the world. Like, the world is growing faster outside of the U.S. And people always say, oh my gosh, like, people outside the U.S. say they're behind the U.S. They're not behind the U.S. They're actually ahead of the U.S. And in Asia, where I just came back from, people, like, I tell people to use SMS text. They're like, I said, your future is using SMS text, to be able to interact with your applications. They're like, SMS text? It's dead.
Yeah.
Like what about WeChat? And what about WhatsApp? Like those are the tools that we're using. Like, what about those? And I think that we live in a world today where what used to be every theater in the world was at a different point. It's all gone. Everyone's basically at the same point. So, one of the things I really feel passionately about is how do you help, and almost every organization is global.
Yeah.
Which also wasn't the case 10, 15 years ago. So how do you actually scale an organization globally is really, really interesting to me, A. And B, how do you put in place and build an organization that instills lifelong learning into your customers? Not learning on a project basis, but lifelong learning. Because these skills are going to keep changing, and what organizations need to be successful are changing by the day. And if you're not teaching at the same time you're doing, I think you're doing your customers an injustice.
Yeah, I think you hit on one of the points there that I know I've experienced this, and I think others have. When you start expanding outside of not just the U.S., but even outside of an English-speaking, whether it's the U.K. or Australia, and start going into non-English-speaking places.
Yep.
Trying to preserve your culture becomes a completely different ballgame.
Yeah,
it's so hard.
It's really hard, but at the same time, like that's the challenge. That's what's going to make or break successful companies. And the companies that are successful today do it well, and that's what we're going to do.
That's awesome. Well, everybody, definitely go check the book out. This is going to be, I think, a great read and great lessons. Yeah. And best of luck for you and the company.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me.
In.
Any more questions? Digital native, misattention, millennial?
She
likes the questions asked of her, so that's a good move.
Yeah. There. What questions do you have for me? No, just kidding. No, you answered them all. I think my question would be is that you just touched on, which was the global growth, and what do you think companies are doing right that other entrepreneurs and people who with big ideas can focus on to move forward?
The forward to the book. In the forward to the book, I dedicate the book to, of course, my wife, but my two kids. My two kids are Ben and Alex. They're 13 and 10. And for me, I'm concerned about them.
Yeah.
Not about them. Well, I'm concerned about them personally too. But overall, I'm concerned that the workforce isn't ready for them.
Yeah. They're so ahead.
Yeah. It's like putting a new fish in a tank.
Right.
With a bunch of fish that you don't know what it is. Like they're going to enter the workforce and they're already thinking entrepreneurially. Mm-hmm. They're already doing everything digitally. And, it's not that far. It's 5-10 years before they enter the workforce. And if the workforce doesn't change in the next 5 to 10 years, I don't feel comfortable that the workplace is ready for what they want to do.
Right.
And that's just my two kids.
Yeah.
So you take the world, like if we can help prepare the world for this world of workers, like that is my
good thing.
Holy grail.
We thought millennials were going to be bad. You just wait.
Exactly.
You just wait.
Awesome. Exactly.
Thank you so much, Jason.
It's great to be here. Thanks for
Jason.
having me.
Can't wait to have you on again, hopefully.
Please,
soon.
anytime.
So there you have it. Follow your intuition, put your customers first, and prepare your company for its next generation of employees by following a digital-first mindset across the board. Thank you so much to Jason for this advice. Make sure you check out his latest book, The Ultimate Guide to a Digital Workforce Experience, Leap for a Purpose, available now. And a special shout out to everyone who made today's episode of the Grow Wire podcast possible. Our sponsors, Blue Mike, Steiner Sports, Ring, as well as our producer, Kendall Fisher, and the editing crew over at Lampstand. Adios!
You just listened to the Grow Wire podcast with host Jason Maynard. Make sure to tune in every week for another episode full of tips, tools, and strategies to take your personal and professional growth to the next level. Until next time.